Hello, my name is Joe, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to submit my second entry for June on the Range 2024, and that is Zane Grey's Last of the Duanes. This is the second book I've read for June on the Range 2024. My first book was Louis L'Amour's Hondo, which I enjoyed very much. And not only is this my second book for June on the Range, this is my second Western ever that I've read. So I only have one other book to compare it to. So I will be comparing this with Hondo quite a bit. And first off, just kind of right out of the gate, it's one interesting thing about this is that this was written, according to Wikipedia in the back, it was written in 1913 in, from what I understand, according to Wikipedia, this novel form. In 1914, a year later, it was, according to the Wikipedia article, it might have been cut up and published as a serialized story in a shorter form. It was published, at least some of the content of this book was published in two other forms called Rangers of the Lone Star and the Lone Star Ranger. And it makes sense that this book was published under, in a serialized format, and it was possible to cut up this book and publish it under different titles, because the one thing that I noticed about it was very episodic, and that's actually an aspect of the book that I didn't really like. Again, I like the book. I think on Goodreads, I'm rating this 3 out of 5 stars. So right in the middle, it's solid. It's a good book. Anyway, we can get in more maybe at the end about kind of my Goodreads ratings and kind of what they mean. But yeah, I rated it 3 out of 4 or 3 out of 5. Just for context, Hondo I liked very much. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. And so yes, it was originally published in 1914 in a much shorter form, and then was made into a movie 4 times. It was rejected in its novel form for having too much gunplay, according to the back of the book. And then in 1996, it was later published in this full novel form. So this was published in the 90s in this form. And as I mentioned, it's very episodic, and that was something that I didn't really like. It sometimes felt like a bunch of short stories put together. For example, there is a chapter by itself, it was very good. There's a chapter where the main character, Buck Duane, has been shot in the arm, and he's just all these cowboys are trying to go after him. Buck Duane is an outlaw, so he's on the run from these cowboys, and it's a very good chapter, very tense. You get in Buck Duane's head, and he's like, man, I wish this would just end. I hate being an outlaw, and yeah, it's great. But if I were making a movie of this, or if I were the editor of the book, I'd be like, hey, listen, that chapter, it just kind of bogs the flow of the novel down. So as a novel, the pacing of this was just off. Even if the individual chapters were sometimes very good, just the pace overall was off. Compared to Hondo, I thought Hondo was very well paced, very to the point. It's a shorter book, but I would say it's more of a page turner. Whereas this, kind of at night, I would read a chapter and just be like, I don't really want to read anymore. So it didn't make me want to kind of keep reading it. I had to force myself at night to make sure not to take a day off. But yeah, so I should probably kind of mention what it's about. I mentioned there's a lot of gunplay, and we'll get into the aspects of the book that I do enjoy. First off, it's about the character, a young guy named Buck Duane. At the beginning of the book, in the very first chapter, Buck Duane is thrown into a situation where he is threatened by someone, and he kills that other person, and it's the first man he ever kills, and he finds out that, like his father before him, he is very, very fast with the quick draw, and it basically, as we get into the story, it's pretty apparent that he is the fastest gun in Texas. He kills this man. He is now an outlaw, and now he is running from the law. So as throughout the book, he's an outlaw who kind of has a heart of gold, and kind of civilian townspeople, they all like him. He doesn't like other outlaws. He's called a lone wolf. He never joins a gang. And, he's a good person, but he also, and this is where I think is something that Zane Grey does, I think, fairly well. He gets into Buck Duane's head, and he has Buck Duane kind of think these very high thoughts and kind of have a lot of self-reflection about how, yes, he's a good person, he hates these outlaws, but also he has a rage inside himself, and he knows that part of him likes getting into duels and finding situations where he's gonna kill someone. He kind of likes killing these bad guys. So that's an aspect of the book that I enjoyed very much. And the gunplay itself, I thought was great. I thought it was really cool compared to Hondo, which again I liked overall better. The action in Hondo was different. There wasn't a lot of quick draws. The action in that book was, Hondo, who's half Apache. At the beginning of the book, he gets into a gunfight with other Apache, and everyone just drops to the desert. And the scenes become very tense as they kind of drop in the kind of the low, desert. I don't know what kind of plants they are, but the low desert vegetation, and it's just a waiting game of, did I hit him? Is he dead? What's going on? And it's really tense, and that happens several times in Hondo. Whereas the action in this book, it's all about the quick draw. So that was something very different. Another aspect of the book that I didn't quite like was throughout the book he will kind of gain several partners. Again, it's very episodic, and he will get a partner, and that partner will leave the story. And often these partners and other characters in the novel will just kind of the world building in this book is often done via exposition, just these big exposition dumps, usually from the partner characters that he teams up with, or other characters throughout the novel, and that I felt a little bit clunky. Maybe I should cut the book a little bit of slack, and let me explain what I mean. Earlier this year, I read for the first time ever Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and like Last of the Duanes, Pride and Prejudice, a lot of its world building and kind of backstory was delivered via dialogue between the characters. And with Pride and Prejudice, that struck me as old-fashioned, but I cut it some slack. It's from the 19th century. This is from the early 20th century. And, you would think that Joe, well, wait a minute, you cut a 19th century book some slack, but you don't cut the early 20th century book some slack for doing the same thing. And let me explain why I don't cut it the slack. It's because every other aspect of the writing struck me as very, very modern. I mean, besides the exposition dumps, there's probably books today with huge exposition dumps, but besides the exposition dumps, everything else in this book struck me as very modern. So I was actually shocked thinking that, wow, this is really written in 1913. Everything except the exposition dumps was very modern. So because of that, because everything else felt like it could have been written today, the big, huge exposition dumps, just slowed the pace down for me. I didn't like it. I wish kind of the world building was done a little bit more naturally, showing via kind of scenes and action versus just, all right, here's a new character and he's just going to tell you, what's going on in this part of Texas. So that I felt, it was a little bit clunky. I will say that the end of the book, kind of the finale, was really good. And actually, before the finale, there is another aspect that I did like. There is a Texas Ranger that is after Buck Duane, and it's, obviously Buck Duane is an outlaw. He's on the run from the law. But it's kind of odd that this one ranger is after him, and he's like trying to make contact with him. And there's a mystery aspect to it. Why is this ranger after this one outlaw specifically? And that I found very compelling. And then that will kind of lead into the final act of the book, where it builds up to this big, almost a mission. There's a goal that Buck Duane has to kind of get done, and he has a task to get accomplished. And I found that very compelling. Overall, another thing I found compelling was that this book reminded me more of almost a spaghetti western. I mean, it has a lot of quick draws. So if you're a fan of like the Man with No Name trilogy, for example, with Clint Eastwood, I mean, he's very fast in the quick draw. This has a guy that's fast in the quick draw, who's kind of, yes, morally good, but in the eyes of the law, he's a bad guy. So it had this spaghetti western aspect to it that I liked very much. And then in the end, we finally get a goal where it all kind of culminates in this one kind of mission. And that was kind of something I think was missing throughout most of the book. So when we finally get kind of an end goal, like, oh, this is how the book's going to end, it is very satisfying. So overall, I mean, that's really all I have to say about it. Overall, and I'll start kind of mentioning what I'm rating these on Goodreads. I'm rating this one 3 out of 5 stars. It's a solid book. I haven't read enough Westerns to know if you want to read a Western, this is a great one to dive into. I don't have enough haven't have as many Westerns under my belt to really make a strong recommendation on it. Out of the 2 I've read, I recommend Hondo more. I just liked it better. I thought it flowed better. But overall, I mean, it was good. It was fun. I liked it. Coming up next, I will be reading a T.V. Olson novel. This is T.V. Olson's Eye of the Wolf. And, we are getting to the end of June. So hopefully, I mean, the task on June in the Range is to read 4 novels by 4 different authors. 1 by Lulu Moore, 1 by Zane Grey, and then 2 by 2 other authors. I will get 3 under my belt before the end of June. If I read a 4th one, it might be just a short story. We'll see if I get to 4. If I don't get there, I don't get there. Because also, this will be 3. If I make it to 4, it'll be 3 Westerns in a row, and I need some variety. I need to probably jump back to some Star Trek or something totally different to add some variety to my reading. But I'm reading this next. I've read like a couple of pages so far, and so far I'm enjoying the writing. So I'm excited to talk about that. Also coming up very soon, I have watched the John Wayne movie Hondo, based on the book that I have read this month. So I'll make a video on this and provide my thoughts on it in my first movie review for my channel. But, I think that's all for now. That was Zane Grey's Last of the Duanes. It was pretty good. It was all right. It was okay. But thanks for watching. Thanks.